Hello, everyone. So yeah, this talk is just prototypes I've done over the last year. I've been trying to make an AR product, so some of it's in that direction. Some of it's just I wanted to screw around with technology and see what happens. So yeah, I'll start going over it. So just to explain who I am, I started this company, Alien Trap Games, about 20 years ago. We're most known for the title Apotheon in the top right. We just released Witchwood last year. It's a 2D game. And then our new title is Gunhead, coming out in 2 weeks on PS5. But what got me into augmented reality and VR is a title called Modbox. So this is a virtual reality game creation tool that I started back in 2015. I got the Vive from Valve, and I tried Tilt Brush, and I thought I wanted to create games inside VR. So this is when we started Modbox, and it was kind of my obsession for 5 years. And here is showing the desktop and VR action, so it's a desktop VR game. But really what I wanted to take it was to make an augmented reality builder with it. But this is back in 2015, so there really wasn't many options that you could do that with. And so our first attempt at that was a Magic Leap version. So this is the Magic Leap version, just in my office, which all the prototypes I do are always just in my office, so you're going to see my office a lot. But this is with the Magic Leap controls, it's very basic. This is with 2 controllers. And yeah, it was pretty limited what you could do, but the idea was there. Anyway, so when I started working, trying to do prototypes back in 2018, nothing existed for augmented reality prototypes. What I wanted to do with augmented reality was stuff with interaction. I wanted 2-track controllers to do it. So something like phone-based augmented reality just wasn't interesting to me. So what I found worked was this device called the Z Mini, which I hooked up to my Vive back then. So this is for a VR pass-through at the time. And it worked fantastic for just prototyping ideas using the Vive, but its actual in-headset experience was god-awful. Like it's hard to describe how bad it felt to wear this headset just from the videos. And I really actually thought at this point that pass-through AR wasn't going to happen. I thought I was just prototyping for the near future optical AR, but just based on my experience trying this, but that clearly turned out to be wrong. So the next few prototypes are with this back in 2018. So the first thing I did was I hooked up Modbox into some of the stuff in my house. So this is hooking up Modbox to the Hue lights in my house. So here I'm controlling it with the UI inside Modbox. I'm just selecting the color of the light, and it's changing in my house. And the next one is I put a crossbow, and then I hooked up this cube. When the cube breaks, the light goes out. So I'm shooting the lights out with the crossbow, which I enjoyed. So really, what I wanted to do with Modbox in augmented reality was allow you to create something in your environment. Because I thought augmented reality apps, they either need to adapt your environment procedurally, or you need to create them for your environment. So here is creating a drone battle in my living room. Then it's perfectly positioned for my living room. It's where I want the drones to come from. It's where I want the weapon to be. I want to be able to grab ammo from the top of the ceiling. And it's all perfectly designed for how I want the game to be in my house. So like I said, this could either be procedural, but I really wanted to create a game that allowed you to make things for your house. So that was the first bit of augmented reality prototyping we did with the app. And then the next thing we did, I really wanted to do something like heavily into physics, because just physics in augmented reality is really fun. Anytime you have track controllers, it's just fun to just mess around with stuff. So just quickly, these are the first tests we did with liquid physics. I'll show this more later on, but liquid physics turned out to be a lot of the prototypes that we've been doing, or I've been doing, where I have liquid, and we're trying to make games around it. So the idea was, it was really hard to incorporate this in a normal game. We were trying to make a cooking sim, and then we thought of a lot of puzzle opportunities. But now we're expanding on that idea with the newer prototypes. And just quickly, for the last prototypes we made in 2018, was mirrors and just kind of messing with avatars. So with mirrors, I just really love it with mirrors, how when you have an augmented reality headset, it doesn't realize it's a mirror. To the augmented reality headset, it's just like a window to another room. So you can do a lot of weird things with that, where you're extending the play space by it just being a room. And I think this is something that augmented reality headsets haven't really taken advantage of yet. But I was just using that to show this idea that it doesn't realize it's just more space. And then the other one with the mirror was testing whether how to use VR IK systems or inverse kinematics to represent yourself as an avatar in augmented reality, which we later used for reflections, which I'll show in a bit. OK, so this is what the headset we've been doing the last year of prototypes on. The last one was the Z MIDI. This one's the Varjo XR3. I think Varjo showed at a few other AWE conference. I don't know if you're here this time. But this headset is truly incredible. It's not at... it was very costly for me as a solo developer. I think I invested about 10K in this setup, especially for just prototyping, which is a ridiculous amount for me to just play to use on my own. But the incredible thing of it compared to the other headset was really the latency. So it was like 50 millisecond latency with my initial headset. And this is under 10. So it actually feels great. High FOV, hand tracking, an actual depth sensor. It is still a lot of neck pain. It is still a heavy device on your head. But it is it really sold me the pass-through AR. And I've heard that this is what Apple used to actually prototype a lot of their experiences before they had the Vision Pro. Anyway, so this got me excited. So once I got this and made that giant investment, I knew I had to make more prototypes. And then so some of the initial ones that I did was the one on the left is just an example of the headset. So this is not my content, but this is, again, my office. And it's just messing with medical imagery in VR. The one on the right is my first test of occlusion in augmented reality. Because I wanted to test how the headset, how good the headset was at actually like detecting walls. You can see right there for a second that it treats the black on the cell phone as like a window. The occlusion doesn't work on the black. I guess the LiDAR doesn't work on that. But yeah, these are just our initial tests before getting into actual products. So this is another test we did that I really wanted to. It was really important to be able to edit, augment our prototype in prototype AR stuff while working on it. So it was really important to be able to open Unity, make changes, position stuff while I'm doing things. So the great thing about this headset and pass-through AR in general is that I can use Unity, I can still code, all with the headset still on. I can adjust it and move things. So this is unbelievably common in everything I've done, that I need to like position things exactly. And usually the way I do that, the way I used to do that is I have one thing, one eye on that, looking at it in AR, and the other eye trying to code or position stuff in Unity. And it was incredibly important that I can do both at once and copy changes over from play mode into edit mode. Anyway, I just wanted to show that. And then the next thing we want to get into was the possibilities of how well this works with hand tracking. So this is before, this is using leap motion hand tracking. So the data you get from that is just a skin mesh of your hands. So we did initial tests of rock, paper, scissors with myself, and then how we can hook that up into particle effects. So these are just particle effects that follow the skin mesh render, and you can see me move around for to get a little light show there. OK, so before I go into the actual, there's a sort of, these prototypes were going towards a product, but before I go into that, I just wanted to show one other thing we tried just to show off the headset, which is I wanted to try the eye tracking to see how we could use that for games. So after the Vision Pro came out, there's a lot of talk online of what the possibilities were for eye tracking. I saw one person mention, Pac-Man with eye tracking, that would be great. And anyone who's ever used eye tracking would know that would be horrible. And so what I wanted to do was make a prototype of how horrible the experience is to actually have eye tracking for input. So you can see here I'm trying to draw something, but this entire time is painful. I'm almost crying. You can see my eyes. But what happens is that when you're drawing with your eyes, you look to where you intend to move next. It's not gaze is not intent. You're just actually looking where you go next, and that's what it's not meant to be used as a tool. We didn't evolve to use our eyes as a tool. So not only is this really just painful to do, it actually feels bad. Like I could feel it in my bone how horrible this experience was. And so I think it just teaches you how to use this sort of input. Well, something like what Apple is doing with the Vision Pro, I think they're just using it as another signal for intent rather than the actual intention, rather than pure input. So I made this test, I put it online, and I got a lot of people calling me an idiot for this, for like, well, that's obviously not what you do, and that's kind of the point. But yeah, it was worth a shot. So the thing I wanted to get back into prototypes is that we still wanted to do something with liquid physics. So the old prototypes used something called NVIDIA Flex for physics in VR, and the new thing that we used was now this thing called Zebra AI. So Zebra AI is another company that went to AWE last year, but it's a fantastic package, Ukrainian company, and they do liquid physics and soft body physics. And so this is using the Tilt 5 AR headset with a Mixcast webcam to view it. This is the initial test of like what I could do with liquid physics in augmented reality. So the first test we did of actually trying to make a game out of it was I just wanted some ability to mess with it with my hands. So this is using the Varjo again, and then I made this is before they had other functionality, but I made a quick model of fingers with my hands, and then colliders, added them to the liquid physics simulation, and then I detected when I'm doing a pinch motion on the right side to spray the liquid and suck it in with the left side. So yeah, it also shows the great hand occlusion of the headset. And one other thing that I noticed with the Varjo, unfortunately, and any upcoming AR headset is that I can't do a lot of things that I want to do, which is refraction of the water. So ideally, I could refract the pass-through camera into the water and do some cool effects, but that's just not how these headsets are evolving. It usually combines the image afterwards, so I don't get a chance to render the water with it. And I think something like the Vision Pro is just not going to have that sort of camera access to allow for that. So the next test we did is I wanted to actually see what it would be like to do it in a room. So this is, I hooked up, I made colliders of all my walls, like a basic physics mesh of my office, and then just started spraying water all over the place. It gets a little bit buggy. You can see some of the liquid just going behind the fridge. Yeah. And then what we really wanted to do was see what we could do for actually just making an actual game out of the liquid. So the main idea I had was that we wanted to do something where you're building with the liquid, sculpting it together. So I started having prototypes of what I could do with sculpting liquid. So this is 0G liquid, and you're just kind of moving it around. But I couldn't figure out how to actually sculpt it. So it would move around, but right after this, you're kind of just getting liquid everywhere. And just like liquid on like the space station, it just goes everywhere. So it'd be little droplets everywhere, and it'd be barely a game. So ideally, I wanted to make something where you're actually sculpting this together and forming stuff, building things. Oh, I should say also that this is there's a reflection on the water that you can see. So that was generated by making a quick room scan of my office on my phone. I've made that as a skybox into Unity, and that's how I made the reflection. So I really wanted, I wanted to start having the water be look more accurate. So I wanted to go further in that direction. So this is, again, me trying to do sculpting. So I thought, OK, well, if I can't figure out how to actually sculpt it and mold it, but I can delete the water that I touch. So this was trying to have it so that anything my hands touch is deleted of the liquid. So this allows you to just kind of sculpt it. And then I had a few people say online, well, that kind of seems like if you spun it, it'd be a pottery wheel. So I made the one on the right attempt at making a pottery wheel of it. And then I had a lot of people tell me I have no idea how to use a pottery wheel because I wasn't going fast enough and wasn't actually using it how you're supposed to. But that was the attempt anyway. So for this one, there's a few things. I finally figured out how to slow down the liquid. So now the game was kind of shaping into place of what you could actually do. So the idea here was that this is just a bunch of liquid in 0G, but I'm actually, I made a new compute shader that slows down the liquid over time, removes the velocity, so you can then actually move it around. And here I'm making a guy, like a bug head thing, or a demon head thing. Yeah. So you can actually sculpt into place with liquid not going everywhere. And then the thing we wanted to try next was actually having good reflection. So before, when I had the reflections of my room, they were this static cube map. But I wanted to show myself in the reflection, because it was really a problem that I'd be looking at the liquid and I wouldn't see myself. You just see the office. So for this, I thought, OK, what if I use that old idea of myself represented as an avatar in augmented reality and show that in the liquid? So you can see here, I'm looking at the liquid. I'm seeing my hands, which are the tracked hands from the Leap Motion, and then a VR inverse kinematic tracked avatar. So this is a pretty rough avatar. If you look really closely, it's actually this weird pilot model that I just quickly found. But the effect is there. Like you can feel, it feels great to actually see yourself in augmented reality when you're interacting with it. And so we finally had an idea of how to actually make a game out of this. So just to quickly go over what we thought. The idea was pretty much, we want to do something with, I want to do something where you interact with water. So the idea was to create something like the Incredible Machine, where there's water coming out of one end, and you got to get into the other end. So this is using a hand interface to place things. There's a certain amount of water coming in and out, and you got to get into the bucket, enough into the bucket in time. So if anyone remembers Incredible Machine from the 90s, you place these contraptions, and here you're directing the flow of water. So at the time, we were calling this Hydrolab. I don't know if it's going to actually be a product, but this is kind of where, this is the closest to a product that we got in my prototyping. Also with this, you can see the basic hand interface of interacting with the pieces in augmented reality, which is sort of this, we could only detect pinches. So I would hover over an object, pinch it, and that's how I'd move it. And I always kind of hated that, but that's how we have it for this prototype. So because I always hated that pinch interaction, I wanted to actually like build things in augmented reality. I explored simulating hand physics and simulating grasping. So for this prototype, you can pick up things physically, and there's tools online to do this. It's by Leap Motion, it's a physics hands package. But the problem with it was that you couldn't tell how you were picking it up. So for this prototype, if you're picking up an object, it shows you with a little mask, a ghost mask, where my fingers are in the simulation. So like if I'm pinching on an object, my fingers don't stop in the real world, but they stop in the simulated world. So I want to show that where your fingers are, how your fingers are actually grasping the object. So this is the way I think we're going to do. So we're still sort of combining these prototypes together, but this is definitely the way that I want to do augmented reality interaction in our projects. And then just as another thing that we're adding to the game, so this is smoke physics, also by Zebra AI, the liquid physics package, liquid physics developers. Really, this is just cool smoke effects, and we're trying to add it into the game. So the idea was, if the game's called Hydrolab, that you're going to be combining chemicals together, and smoke will come out. But really, this is just an opportunity to mess with smoke physics and fire physics, which felt amazing in augmented reality. And then at the end, I think I'd show it on my fingers. But all right, I got 5 minutes, so I'll go through quick. But really, the end goal was to actually expand, make Hydrolab sort of a fun with physics idea. So this is adding the first attempt of adding portals to it, augmented reality portals. So I always wanted to make a game with portals in VR. And then one night I had the idea, like, how could I work that into augmented reality? And I thought, well, if I scan my room, I could show that in the portal. And then for my hands, I could show the 3D version of my hands. So for here, when you see my hands in the portal, you're seeing a 3D version of it. And that's the skybox that I previously made for reflections in the portals. So I had a lot of people ask me, like, how did I do this? Did I have another camera in the room or something like that? And yeah, it was really just, the main thing is that I can't show anything above my hand there. So if it gets past this, it's just a floating hand. So ideally, I would have like a great avatar of myself or a scan version of my room to do this for the portal. But yeah. And then we wanted also to explore the options of what you could do with portals, like how you can make that into a puzzle. So for this, this is putting a cube, it's putting a small cup into a portal, and it becomes a giant cup. So if anyone's ever played Portal, the video game, there's a lot of messing with scale, and we want to do something similar with that. And then here's finally us combining this is me combining the prototypes together. So this is liquid into the portals, and then they go to the next portal. So you're constructing puzzles to get between the portals. Maybe you move the portals around, and the liquid goes through them into the next portal. So the really hard part about this was moving the liquid to the other portal, detecting when it goes into a portal, moving it, and you can still see it's not perfect. There's a seam there, and I don't even know if we can get rid of that seam. I've looked into it, and it's a very hard problem to solve, but that seems essential to what we need to do. And yeah, and then so just to briefly go over some random other prototypes that we're making with the same product. I think that it could be a product, but I wanted to go back to the idea of mirrors, how mirrors work in augmented reality. And so this is the same idea, Hydrolab, but now you're trying to fill a bucket in the mirror world. So in the mirror world, I mean, you can't actually physically access it, but you have to create contraptions that go inside the mirror and to put the liquid in. So the bucket and the liquid and all that are only showing, the buckets they're only showing on the mirror's side. So it kind of works. I don't know how this is a product. You wouldn't you wouldn't put your mirror somewhere in your house exactly where the game's supposed to be, but it's just another fun idea. And along that same line, I really wanted to do something where I was simulating. I wanted to play catch with myself in the mirror. That was the intention of this. So it was liquid physics, but now that my hands in the mirror are also physically simulated, so I can interact. So they're also interacting with the liquid, just like my regular hands. So the idea is pretty much I wanted to play catch back and forth. One thing I'd love to have someone make a ping pong type table tennis version of this, but again, people are not going to take a mirror off their house and then position it for these games. And then lately, so I really, like before in all the other prototypes I did, the room scan was just a photosphere. So it's just like I use my phone, make a photosphere, it like stitches them together horribly. So lately I started looking into Gaussian Splats. So there's this new idea of how you capture reality into a Gaussian Splat. It's kind of influenced by AI nerfs, but it can render in real time. I can't really explain it that well myself in this talk, but I encourage looking into it. But here's some of the prototypes we did of it. So there's this Gaussian Splats package that someone just made recently for Unity. So we incorporated that. The one on the left is the initial scans, and the one on the right is something I scanned 4 days ago. So I scan myself, and I position myself, and then I can walk around and interact with myself. So what's really great about Gaussian Splats is just how well it just doesn't feel like a model. It can represent hair really well, even though I don't have a lot of hair visible there. But it really is a great way to just scan the real world and put it into the virtual world. But it doesn't really work for changing any lighting. It really is just good for sort of static objects. But what I wanted to use it for, so this next prototype, what I wanted to use it for is how we could do the portals. So I can look into a portal and I can have the actual representation of my office here. So for the next prototype, in the last 30 seconds I could show this. But I just want to add a disclaimer. This is the glitchiest thing I've ever done, and it looks like a giant hack. But the idea is there. So I haven't released this yet, but the idea is that there's a virtual mirror that I can look into that shows myself, my hands, and the Gaussian Splat version of myself just poking out. So it does show so inside, that's the version of my office is a Gaussian Splat. It's really, it looks, besides the jitteriness, it looks really great in terms of it doesn't just feel like a static image, but that just looks terrible also. So I think I need to make a better version of myself and you can see also the hands, they're just these dislocated hands. Okay though, I think that's the end of my talk. I think I'm at 125. So yeah, thanks guys.